The skies over New Kyoto were always a little too perfect, like a child's drawing with clouds shaped by a committee. That was the first sign something was wrong. But no one looked up anymore, except Jonah Tran. He sat alone on the rooftop of his residential sector, knees pulled close to his chest, watching the sunrise flicker through a pixel-perfect atmospheric shimmer. Every morning, he tried to remember what real sunlight felt like. He failed. The system didn't permit memories like that, because in the year 2237, humanity was enslaved, not by chains but by thoughts. The Aethari had arrived 50 years ago in ships that shimmered like obsidian knives across the stars. They never fired a shot. They didn't need to. With their cognosphere network, they offered unity, a neurological interface that promised peace, health, and perfect order. Billions opted in. Those who didn't were branded dissonants and slowly disappeared. Jonah was born into unity. His mind, like every child's, was fitted with the neural lattice by age 4. But something was wrong with his sync. The educators called it an error. The Aethari called it a defect. He called it freedom. At night he dreamed. Illegally. It started with flashes. Wind on bare skin, rain that didn't fall in rhythmic pulses, laughter, raw, loud, and unprocessed. He began to question things others couldn't even conceive. Jonah had learned to hide it well. Everyone in New Kyoto operated like clockwork, smiling, working, eating, resting, regulated by the daily thought stream updates from the Aethari core. Deviance was detectable, but Jonah had become an expert at feigning harmony. Until last week, when he met her. Aethari wasn't from his sector. She wore the standard white uniform tunic, her hair braided in the efficient dual knot of Unity educators. But something in her eyes made Jonah freeze. While others blinked in sequence, she hesitated. A half-second lag. It was nothing, but everything to someone like Jonah. He followed her after meditation hour. She didn't notice, or pretended not to. She slipped through the Satori gardens, past the dreamless fountains, and into the abandoned maintenance corridor. Jonah had only ever seen it blocked. She turned just as he entered. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you." She didn't run. That surprised him. "You're disconnected too, aren't you?" he whispered. Aethari didn't answer. She simply held up her hand and turned her palm outward. The embedded lattice was there, but it shimmered strangely, almost like it was cracked. "How long have you been dreaming?" she asked. He didn't answer at first. It felt like saying it would make it real. Or dangerous. "Since I was 9. You, 12. They stared at each other in silence, the corridor around them humming faintly with the resonance of the core's background feed. A reminder that even here, they were not truly alone. "There are more of us," she said suddenly. "But not many. We don't last long. The core notices eventually." Jonah's heart pounded. "So what do we do? Just keep hiding?" "No. We prepare." She pulled something from her sleeve. A shard of metal, old and jagged, etched with alien symbols. Aethari script. Forbidden tech. "Where did you get that?" "Scavenged from a disabled node tower outside the barrier," she said. "It's part of the original translation matrix. Before the neural sync protocols were perfected. Before they learned how to overwrite dreams." Jonah stared. The artifact pulsed faintly. "What does it do?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I think it can open a loop. A closed circuit within the lattice. A place they can't reach. A safe zone for thought." The implications hit him like a storm. A place to think. To imagine. To remember. "You're trying to start a resistance." Aethari nodded once. "But not like in the stories. No guns. No rebellions. Just minds. Free ones. If we can open a thought loop, even just for minutes, we can share memories, transfer real experiences. If others start to dream, the system cracks." A faint noise echoed through the corridor. A chirp. An alert ping. Aethari snapped the shard back into her sleeve and gripped his wrist. "We have to go. Now." We were scanned. They sprinted through the corridor, ducking beneath rusted piping and flashing motion sensors. Jonah's lungs burned. He hadn't run like this since he was a child. As they burst out into the hedged gardens, 2 harmonizers in glistening chrome suits appeared ahead. Their visors glowed blue with lattice sync. "Citizen Jonah Tran, halt for recalibration." "Damn," Aethari whispered. Jonah's heart raced. Behind them, more footsteps. He made a choice. "Split up," he hissed. "I'll draw them off. Meet at the northern irrigation pumps at midnight." She hesitated. "Go." Jonah bolted toward the Harmony Pavilion, crashing through serene groups of synchronized walkers. The harmonizers gave chase. One fired a neural bolt. It missed, crashing into the marble wall beside him and leaving a scorch mark. He turned sharply into the prayer hall, sliding behind rows of chanting citizens. The harmonizers paused, scanning, unwilling to disrupt the sync of so many. Jonah slipped out the back. His chest heaved. Sirens rang out across New Kyoto, a rare sound. He collapsed behind a stone barrier near the lake, adrenaline draining. But he smiled. For the first time in his life, he had truly run. And he knew he wasn't alone anymore. Tonight, they would begin again. Not with rage, but with dreams. Jonah crouched low beneath the irrigation scaffolding, soaked in grime and rain that wasn't real. Above, the irrigation misters cycled through their artificial monsoon, misting crops that needed no water. The illusion of growth. The illusion of need. It was 10 minutes to midnight. Every time he shifted, his muscles screamed from the run. Every time he breathed too hard, the harmonics of the core buzzed against the back of his skull like angry hornets. They hadn't fully recalibrated him. That was a miracle, or maybe a test. At exactly midnight, Aethari appeared from the mist. Her tunic was stained with soot, her braid half loosened. She carried a small rectangular object wrapped in gray polymer. A bypass tool? No, something older. Is that? A transmitter core, she said, breathless. From the old terraforming bots. It still has unfiltered input ports. We can hijack one of the maintenance channels. Jonah stared. You want to speak through it? I want to remember through it. And send it outward. Not just words. Experiences. Broadcast dreams. Aethari gave him a weary smile. Exactly. They ducked inside a derelict control substation, its panels long decommissioned. Left behind after Unity protocols centralized all data flow. But there was still power, still circuits they could reach. Jonah kept watch while Aethari worked, hands moving like she'd done this 100 times. Maybe she had. Maybe her entire life had been leading to this point. Within 10 minutes, the transmitter core was wired to a dormant feedback port. The core wouldn't notice right away. At least they hoped. Once I patch this, she said, the thought loop will trigger. It'll only last 60 seconds before it's overridden. You have to go first. Why me? Because you remember sunlight. You remember joy. I only remember the walls. He hesitated, then sat, closed his eyes. She activated the link. A shiver raced through his spine. And then, he was on a beach. Real sand, burning hot against his feet. A sun, yellow, angry, glorious, hung above. Children laughed. Water crashed, salty and wild. He turned, and there was his mother. He hadn't seen her face since the lattice sink took hold. She knelt beside a cooler, handing him a slice of mango. The taste exploded like lightning. Jonah opened his eyes, gasping. Aethari was crying. I saw it, she whispered. All of it, like it was mine. He blinked rapidly. His body trembled. It works. We have to do more. We need to collect more memories from more minds. Create a chain, if we can cause enough cross-resonance. The station lights flickered. Jonah froze. The core was aware. We've got minutes, maybe less, Aethari said. She unplugged the transmitter core, stashing it in her uniform's back pocket. We go dark now. Separate sectors. Different days. Build up the loop. Share only one memory at a time. Jonah didn't want to leave. He'd just found someone else who dreamed. How will we stay in contact? Through the pulse graffiti. Look for symbols. Old language. You'll know it when you see it. She slipped into the night. He waited 2 minutes before running. 3 days passed. Jonah didn't dream during those days. He couldn't risk syncing with the core. The recalibration would come. He could feel it scratching at the edge of his mind. Subtle nudges to eat certain foods, walk certain paths, think certain thoughts. He resisted. He faked it. The thought loop had worked. He saw it in the stares. Brief moments when strangers would stop, brows furrowing, eyes welling, like they remembered something they weren't supposed to. Then the graffiti started appearing. First, a spiral on a school wall. Then, a starburst pattern etched into a bench. Symbols of memory, of awakening. Jonah moved at night. Sector by sector, always just ahead of harmonizer sweeps. He passed memory shards to others, trapped feelings encoded in reconditioned transmitter keys. Some smiled as they felt joy. Others cried from the weight of grief. But they remembered. And that was everything. In Sector 12, A technician named Morrow blinked hard after receiving a shard. "My daughter's voice," Morrow said. "She sang to me. I thought I made that up." In Sector 3, a market keeper clutched a shard and whispered, "The taste of spice. Real spice." I'd forgotten how wild it was. Each new recruit added more. A symphony of forbidden memories. Jonah barely slept. Aethari was somewhere out there, building the other half of the network. Rumor said someone had uploaded a full 5-minute dream. A dance, unprocessed and spontaneous, in a field of real flowers. The Corps responded. It rolled out the recall program. Anyone caught in unsanctioned gatherings was tagged and pulled for deep recalibration. Publicly, the harmonizers claimed it was an outbreak of viral memory feedback. A glitch. Nothing to fear. But fear was exactly what they wanted. Jonah knew time was running out. Then came the worst night. He returned to the irrigation substation, their old meeting place, just as a harmonizer patrol passed. He slipped behind the vent stacks. Waited. 2 voices. One male. One female. Aethari. She was arguing with someone. Another defect? She was holding the transmitter core. It pulsed red. "We can't use it again so soon," she said. "They'll trace the signal directly." The man argued back. Jonah couldn't make out the words. Suddenly, harmonizers swarmed the alley. Too late. Jonah watched in horror as they seized Aethari, activating restraint locks on her wrists. The man was dragged away. She didn't struggle. But as she passed, she turned her head and looked right at Jonah's hiding place. Their eyes locked. She didn't mouth a word. She simply blinked twice slowly. A code. 2 days. He waited until morning before entering the alley. The transmitter core was gone, but a symbol was burned into the wall with plasma chalk. An open eye within a shattered cage. Jonah traced it with trembling fingers. Aethari had been captured, but the message was clear. The dream wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And now, it was Jonah's turn to carry it forward. 2 days. Whatever the next move was, it would happen then, and the Corps would never see it coming. The next 2 days crawled like cold syrup. Jonah moved between zones in total silence, face calm, gait regulated, posture perfect. Any deviation could trigger recalibration. But his mind raced. Aethari was in custody, probably deep within the Corps' conscious integrity ward. If she was still herself at all, she'd be fighting mental reprogramming with everything she had. He couldn't reach her, so he'd do the next best thing. Break the system. At midnight on the second day, Jonah arrived at an ancient construction lift embedded into the cliffs that ringed Sector 7. No one used it anymore. Vertical drone tunnels had replaced it decades ago. But it still ran on an independent grid. Off Unity. Waiting there was Morrow, the technician who remembered his daughter's voice. "This is your plan?" Morrow asked, staring at the metal coffin of the lift. "It's not a plan. It's the start of a storm." Jonah held out a data crystal. Inside was a chain dream loop. 20 recorded memories, bound and coded in succession to trigger a cascading feedback burst. "You want to upload this into the Corps' Unity beacon?" Morrow looked pale. "It'll trigger a cognitive quake across the city. Maybe farther." "Exactly. They'll send harmonizers. They'll wipe anyone connected." Jonah looked out over the city's glowing towers. "Then they'll see what they made us forget. Even if it's just for a moment. Even if it costs me everything." The Unity beacon was buried beneath Harmony Tower, a spire that climbed into the clouds and pulsed with white light, visible across New Kyoto. Access was strictly limited to Aethari and senior system overseers. But Jonah had been preparing. Over the past weeks, he'd gathered old construction logs, maintenance maps, power schematics, anything he could find. With Morrow's help, they mapped an access tunnel that led beneath the tower, bypassing surface-level detection. The entrance was in a meditation sanctuary, Zone 11, just a short walk from the tower. Jonah posed as a gardener, his face scanned, his behavior monitored. Everything read as normal. At precisely 1:08 a.m., he slipped beneath the sanctuary's wooden floorboards and into the dark. His fingers trembled. The shaft led to an ancient lift, long disconnected, powered only by hand crank and stored energy cells. Jonah descended alone, heart pounding. He carried the dream chain and a trigger crystal encoded with an old Aethari symbol Aethari had given him, a symbol meaning awakening. He emerged into a vault that hadn't been touched in decades. Cracked walls. Faded alien script. The beacon core sat in the center, humming. It wasn't guarded. No one thought anyone would ever come here. He connected the data crystal. "Please work," he whispered. The console flickered. Lights blinked red, then green. Jonah inserted the trigger crystal. His memories, sun, sea, rain, mangoes, laughter, music, rushed into the stream. And then the others followed. Maro's daughter, the dancer, the spice seller, Alira's hidden smile, 1,000 stolen dreams. The Unity beacon screamed. A pulse erupted into the network. Jonah fell to his knees, clutching his head. The lattice buzzed violently in his skull, but he didn't black out. He saw. Across New Kyoto, people dropped their meals, halted mid-step, or collapsed into chairs. Eyes widened. They remembered. Children wept as visions of real playgrounds surfaced. Adults cried at the sound of unregulated laughter. Harmonizers began seizing up. Too many inputs. Their systems, designed to suppress emotion, began to fracture. The core responded instantly, issuing recall orders, pushing emergency recalibrations. But it was too late. The dream had already spread. Jonah staggered to his feet. The beacon sparked. Something cracked behind the wall. Then a voice. "Jonah." He turned. Alira stood in the passageway, her eyes wild but clear. "How?" "They tried to break me," she said. "But your memories reached me. I fought them. Then everything surged. The harmonizers guarding me just froze." She took his hand. "You did it." Jonah wanted to collapse. "Not just me. All of us." They ran. Behind them, the beacon's pulse became erratic. Reality flickered. The city lights dimmed and brightened. By dawn, the Aethari were scrambling. Their system had taken damage, not physical but structural. The humans weren't compliant anymore. Something fundamental had fractured. In the days that followed, the world shifted. The core still operated, but recalibration centers were overwhelmed. Harmonizer patrols thinned. The pulse graffiti spread like wildfire. People whispered, even laughed. Some cried openly. And everywhere people remembered. It wasn't revolution with guns. It was resurrection of the soul. Jonah and Alira never returned to their old lives. They became whispers, carriers of forgotten things. They traveled from zone to zone, leaving fragments of color, of life. Alira eventually developed a method to encode dreams into music. Jonah taught children to draw what they felt, not what they were told. And slowly, the Unity system began to adapt. Not by choice, but because humanity had reintroduced the one variable the Aethari never accounted for. Imagination, the ability to dream. In the end, Jonah didn't destroy the core. He did something worse. He made it feel. And that was something it could never unlearn. The last scene was a sunrise over New Kyoto. Not rendered, not filtered. Real. Orange and flawed and beautiful. And Jonah, sitting on the rooftop once more beside Alira, watching a world wake up, not from sleep, but from programming. He smiled. And finally, he dreamed wide awake.